Go ahead with our speaker introduction. Today's keynote is going to be introduced by our very own Ed Barrie, Chief Product Officer at Treasury4.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Really appreciate everyone taking time out today to learn more about AI and think about how the technology is advancing, but more importantly, how you can leverage it for your organization and your own uses. I'm joined today by Abhilash Nair. Abhilash has been a mentor to Treasury4 since day one, and that's really 3 years ago. We started working with the WestCap team, and he's been a trusted advisor to me and our team, and he'll be delivering today's keynote session dedicated to teaching skills treasurers and treasury teams need to lead and operate with AI and what to prioritize and what's coming next. Abhilash has a PhD in physics, which is incredible. It has a deep technical knowledge, but also the most important thing about Abhilash is he's a teacher, and he is so fun to learn from and listen from, and that's his DNA as being a teacher. Abhilash leads WestCap's AI and Treasury technology practice, and is an AI leader who made it his mission to make generative AI understandable for everyone, not just engineers. He leads WestCap's AI Collective, which is a community of hundreds of engineers, subject matter experts, and leaders across 20 plus portfolio companies of WestCap. He has developed patented machine learning approaches, helped investors separate real AI capability from hype, which there's a lot of hype out there, and transformed engineering teams to build with AI at measurably higher speed and accuracy. And that's really important because that's the journey we started a year ago at Treasury4 with Abhilash. AI, it's been on a tear for the last few years and even more in the last 12 months. We made the decision as a company about a year ago to go all in on AI. And when going all in on AI is not just riding in the plane; it's actually jumping out of the plane with no parachute and saying we're going to learn this real time, very quickly. And the things that we learn and are able to do has been really tremendous for us. And so, as a personal thanks to Abhilash for all of his mentorship to our team, teaching, involvement, everything across the board. And with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to him and to do some teaching and education today. So thank you, Abhilash.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to be here. I recommend everybody have Ed introduce you because it's the most flattering introduction you'll ever get. I love working with Treasury4, and it's remarkable what they've been able to accomplish, especially in the autonomous development and really putting AI to use in the platform. It's been really fun and rewarding to watch. Today's agenda is simple. You will leave here with a better understanding of what a language model is. You will have a better understanding of how to get more quality output out, and you will understand what is meant by context. You might have heard phrases like context window, context engineering. And so the aim here is to be really approachable. Because I can't see the chat and the slides at the same time, if folks want to give like a thumbs up when something was a great idea, or you have a question, feel free to interrupt me at any moment. You don't need to wait until Q&A specifically. So if you have any questions, put it in the chat and we can go from there. I think we're starting off with a poll. On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your AI literacy today? And so Emily, I think is going to put out a poll in the chat, right? Oh, it's right here on my screen. Perfect.
Gonna give it a couple seconds here. Looks like we have 75% participated. Let's see if we get to close to 100. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share.
Wow, it's almost like a normal curve, almost exactly. What a nice random sampling. I love it. All right. Emily, are we safe to move on to the next slide?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So I do this slide, and I'm always sensitive to the fact that you may read this and take it for granted. And I'm trying to convey something a little subtle that isn't super obvious. First, you have to believe both of these statements. AI is dumb and AI is powerful, both. If you only believe that AI is dumb, you're going to miss this wave and you're not going to be able to compete in the market. If you believe AI is all powerful, you end up falling for false promises from vendors. You end up setting your team off on an initiative that'll never pan out uh, because of believing that AI is more capable than what it really is. And when I say AI is dumb, I mean something very specific. I'm saying that if you give me access to any of your AI systems, I can make it worse, right? The quality is actually on a razor's edge, and a lot of people don't know what levers are actually at play here. And so that's the whole point of this talk, is to give you a better understanding of what matters and what does not. Number two, context is the only thing that matters. And if you don't know what the word context means right now, don't worry, we're going to get into it. But the context is basically everything you have in your session. It's everything you've written in that session, all the responses you've gotten, all the files you've uploaded, all the tools you're using, tools, MCPs, connectors, they're all the same thing, right? They all mean the same thing. That is going to determine what your output looks like. The way to mentally imagine what this means is imagine your context as everything you've done in the session as an essay, and you're giving that essay to a language predictor, and you're saying, finish this essay. That's essentially what's happening in a rough, kind of simple toy model way. That's all it is. So if I started the story coherently, I can expect a coherent output. If my story was jumbled and my session was jumping all over the place, changing topics, changing goals, I'm going to get a bad result, right? So this, we're going to get into what that means in terms of consistency. Claude Skills is a feature that came out in November of last year, and it changed everything. So if you remember early days of ChatGPT and AI, there were things called hallucinations, right? Where it would just make up a number or just autocomplete a sentence, but it has no grounding in reality. Claude Skills was an answer to that. So tool use was the first thing that came out that let people have some sense of control over what their AI is exposed to. Then skills came out, and we're going to really dive into what skills are. And so you'll have a really strong understanding. For now, just know that skills are half probabilistic and half deterministic, meaning half of it is prompt based and random, and half of it is deterministic or predictable, right? It's going to do the same process again and again and again. And that's what really unlocked the ability for finance teams to really explore AI and get it to do real work where quality and accuracy really matter. Everyone gets into debates about which model or which AI frontier lab is the best or the smartest. But the truth is, the model is never the reason why your output is bad. You can take a bad model or a small model, really not capable model, give it pristine context, and get a good result. You can get the best model out there, Opus 4.7, for example, and you can confuse it very easily, right? So context is the thing that matters. What is in your session matters. In this session, I'm using Anthropic Claude just as an example, right? We got to pick some flavor and then talk about the concepts in that flavor. But these apply to ChatGPT, to Cursor, whatever platform you have out there. The ideas you're learning today are applicable. So don't think that this is somehow just only for Anthropic's tools. So, like I mentioned, in this box is everything that's in your session. So instruction prompts, that could be your Claude MD file, the markdown file, the instruction prompts for your agents, the tools and MCPs you're connecting into, all of the previous prompts, all of the attachments, and your current message is being resent every single time you hit enter. A lot of people don't understand that. This is very critical to know because, again, think about that mental model of I've written an essay and I want the AI to finish the essay, right? That's all that's happening under the hood. A year ago, the conversation was around prompts, building up prompt libraries, and prompt engineering. You should know that prompts are purely probabilistic, meaning it's a hope and prayer strategy that the language model pays attention to what you wrote in a prompt. So when you hear anything with a prompt, think random. Okay. To the right, you see a box that talks about what context engineering is, because in the prompt world, prompt engineering tips were things like repeat yourself, say the same statement in the top, middle, and end, yell at the model, create more sense of urgency in your writing. All of those tips were what people were doing, and they were building these large prompt libraries. But it didn't get away from the probabilistic aspect of it, right? It's still random. It's still a dice roll. So context engineering is kind of thinking about your chat session and curating your chat session. So you're cutting out or adding in parts and pieces. Ooh, I'm going to remove that tool from that model's context because I don't need it right now. I went on a tangent, but now my session has that in it. So let me start a new session and continue to remain focused, right? So we're going to get more into this, but I want you to know that this is what is meant by context engineering. You might have heard that phrase. And there were a lot of articles that talked about going from prompt engineering to context engineering. So that's the name of the game, and that's the only thing that you should worry about is what is in your context. A simple explanation of why context matters and the mechanism at play is let's play a game. I will start a poem and you complete it. And I give you the word "the" and hand you the mic. The space that you have to complete that poem is vast. It's almost infinite numbers of poems you could write with just the word "the" being your constraint. But if I say the cat in the hat and then I hand you the mic, you see how in your mind to make a coherent poem, the solution space you're going to look for to complete my poem is much less, right? Because now I've constrained you. Now I've said the topic is the cat in the hat. And so now you need to figure out what is relevant to that. That's essentially what's happening. So too little context. If I just give you the word "the," way too expansive. If I give you way too restrictive of a context, too much context, I'm limiting your ability to go find a solution because the way language models work, they look for similar topics and they have areas of different topics, word sentences, fragments, ideas, concepts. All of them are in like a word cloud in this language model, right? And so the idea is to give it the Goldilocks amount of context. And that takes experience and that takes just jumping in and trying. And so this is the art of AI. This is the skill that you're building. How do I construct a session that is best for the output that I want, right? And nothing else, nothing distracting. So if you know American TV shows and Price is Right, you might remember the game Plinko. Basically, a plastic chip bounces around randomly on a bunch of pegs and lands on a prize box. That's essentially what a language model is, but it's taking it to the next level. Instead of just dozens of pegs, it's hundreds of billions of pegs, right? So each peg you can think about as, you've heard, oh, this is a 200 billion parameter model. Each parameter is a discrete thing that it thinks about, that it bounces over, right? And so those are all of the pegs that it's going to hit before it arrives at the bottom. And what decides what's at the bottom? So here in my example, I've got a sentence that I'm building on the left-hand side. The best way to improve your, and then these could be the examples that get primed in the language model as the solution space, as the prize space, where it goes hunting for the next word, right? So you could see how if I change that sentence on the left, those available prizes are going to be different. The available words it could choose are different. This is really critical. Every 3 years, a frontier AI provider or a founder will say, we are close to AGI, artificial general intelligence. That is a hypothetical situation where the machines are as smart and capable as humans in being able to reason about the world. But that cannot be true here, right? Nobody chose that word. The chip landed there, right? It didn't mean that word. It didn't uh, pick that word. It's not trying to communicate to you. There's no cognition. There's no sentience. We can get into that philosophical debate if you want to, but just know that my leaning is that there is zero cognition. There's zero sentience in this model, because to me, it's just I have 200 billion dice and I'm rolling all the dice. So for me, it's not anything about sentience, cognition. If I swear at it and it swears back, it's not because it got angry. It's because I've primed it to look at angry language, right? So if I get mad at it and I swear at it, I've now introduced language in my context that is a swear word. So it's going to look back into its mind of, ooh, where is that? Oh, my training on 4chan and these kind of toxic communities that exist out there, those are also in the training, right? It's not just that it got trained on all of the good parts of the web, it got trained on everything. And so just know that when your model, it tells you something, think of it as a parrot that is phonetically reproducing human language, but doesn't actually understand the words it's saying, but it could reproduce that language. Language models can be thought of as vector spaces. Now, before people lose attention here, just imagine back in the days where you had X, Y, and Z coordinates, right? A real life language model has thousands of dimensions, but it's really hard to make a drawing of 1,000 dimensions. So let's just simplify it down to a three-dimensional model. This will be our toy mental model that we will use. If I start off the conversation talking about children's birthday parties and cake and party hats and gifts and piñatas, and then I change the conversation and I say, I also want to, go fishing next month. Can you plan something in Spokane for me? I've already made a mistake here, because think about what's happening in the language model. These words don't arrive at the language model as words. They arrive as vectors, these long list of numbers, right? Thousands of dimensions. So instead of XYZ, it's N1 all the way to N 5,000, something like that. And so, but if we reduce it down to three dimensions and we ask the question, what if I talked about both of those topics that are exactly anti-parallel to each other? And I just arbitrarily put those topics there. Well, look at the average of those two vectors. The average of those two vectors points to an area of space that is neither useful for outdoor activities or birthdays. That's why when you switch topics or you change topics or you introduce or you quote unquote pollute your context, this is what it means. You've introduced an idea, a word, concept that is taking the language model into the wrong direction. Okay. This is the easy part to convey, because I could draw it, you could see it, it makes sense. There's another type of consistency where the red and green would actually go well together, which is planning an event. So let's say I wanted to plan a children's birthday party outdoors, or we're going to go camping for my daughter's birthday. Because it's about planning an event, there's a functional consistency there, right? I'm trying to do the same act. So if I'm making a plan or writing code, you must know that those are two different acts, right? Planning the work is an expansive lateral thinking task, right? You're trying out a whole bunch of ideas. You may throw out a handful of them and you get down to crystallizing what the plan is. AI novices will take that plan in that same session and say, okay, now go do it. But you've already made a mistake, because think about it. All of the things that you've already ruled out, or those alleyways and tributaries that you've explored and decided not to pursue, all of them are still in your context session, right? So that's going to get passed in along with all of this. So you have all of this planning context, lateral thinking, with implementation, which should be more funneling in, right, to a very design spec or design requirements, product requirements. So you either have to have narrative consistency. Are you talking about the same thing? If I looked at my chat session, does it feel like a screenplay where there's a narrative arc? Or is it functionally consistent? Am I talking about the same kinds of things? So that's really, really critical for people to understand. This is what's happening when language models go bonkers and they go awry, or they're right on point and they're super, super effective. This is a pop quiz. So, uh, Cooper, which do you think will get you better results? We have two sessions here, Cooper, and Ed, you should feel free to chime in here. There's one session where it's all talking about one topic. The colors represent different topics. And then session B is switching around topics. What does your gut say, Ed? Which one's going to give you better results?
Session A. And
Absolutely.
whenever I do a chat or question or prompt, I always keep it in that same topic. I never commingle
I
anything.
love it. See, this is why he's a
Agreed.
pro.
Agreed.
Yeah, I know you know the answer there, Cooper. Uh, but so, I talked early on about things being probabilistic or deterministic. Switch those words with just random or predictable, right? So the idea is that this is an imperfect tool and we want to get predictable, high quality results. How do we do that? Well, you should know that different AI concepts have different levels of probabilistic or deterministic behavior. Some are purely random, and some are kind of like a decision tree or a heuristic, where I'm going through a very deterministic approach. If I look at all of the features that are available in Claude, and these are uh, also available across every single major AI platform out there. They just call it different things. So Claude MD or instruction prompts, they're also called agent.md. These are purely prompting, purely a dice roll, right? That's a hope and prayer strategy. You're hoping it'll pay attention to that sentence at the right time. As you move on, I'm going to skip over slash commands and sub agents because those are developer focused. But for non-developers working with any of these, skills are where you need to spend your time because they are the magic way to get more predictable, high quality output that meets your spec. And lastly, for developers, there's this idea of a hook where at certain points in my conversation, these events get fired. So when I start a session, there's a session start hook that got fired. And I get to associate those events with certain things I wanted to do. And so hooks are purely deterministic. You mean it's 100% guarantee that if that event happens, the session started or the session ended or the sub agent stopped its response, one of those events, it will fire your command, right? It's not up to chance anymore. Skills are special. They were released in November of last year and they changed the entire landscape. I would say skills are a big part of why Anthropic got so much attention early on in 2026. It is by far the most powerful feature out there, even stronger and more powerful than MCP servers, but is really, really hard to explain because skills are kind of like a blank canvas. If you have a flavor preference, a style preference, that can be a skill. If you want your AI model to interact with a third-party SaaS application that you have an API key to that doesn't have an MCP, you can make a skill for that. If you have design constraints, product requirements, you have checksums that you must meet when you're doing financial reporting, or you have certain styles of numerical representation, how you do shorthand for numbers that are very large, all of those can be skills, right? And so when I say skills are really important, if all you take away from this talk is that, ooh, I should learn how to build a skill, that is going to be a productive exercise for you. I'm giving you two skills here. These are the skills I tell every executive and every business SME, especially if they're in marketing. They have a lot of email correspondences. Our investor relations team uses it. The partners use it here at WestCap. So the first skill is around writing in your voice. There are clear tells when your writing is obviously AI. Back when ChatGPT was all the rage, the big giveaway that something was generated by AI was section headings and also this kind of turn of phrase. It is not revolution, it's evolution, or it is not blank, it's blank. It was pervasive. If you just do a Google search on that, you will find all of the ChatGPT generated content out there because it's just not something that humans do often. In Claude, the example is the M dash, the longer dash, right? I, I would be hard pressed to find one example where I naturally used an M dash in my writing, but once you see it, you're like, that's likely made with AI. So the idea isn't to deceive the audience. The idea is to prove to the audience you've done some work and that you're not just giving them randomly generated AI output for them to review, right? You're seeing a lot of instances where Deloitte in Australia got into trouble where they created a consulting report for $400,000, I believe, and the state of or the country of Australia found out that it was AI generated, and they had issues with it because why am I paying $400,000 if you just had your AI generate all this content for pennies on the dollar? And so it's a perception game, right? AI generated output without human review. I think in my mind, it's almost offensive to send that out to people because you're basically saying it's not worth my time to review this AI output. I want you to do it. So the more you can make your AI talk like you, speak like you, have your sensibilities, the better you'll be. The second skill I do after the first one is making a skill to understand your work week. Who are you meeting with? Which meetings can be punted? Which meetings are critical? Which meetings are the ones where the other attendees have not accepted and you need to send a follow-up email? Which are the ones that I can punt because it's not a critical meeting? Can you draft me emails for that as well? I did this for my manager, Kevin Marcus, and it's changed the way he does meetings because he's often triple booked, double booked, and a lot of people want his time. And this gives him basically a strategic map on how he wants to deal with his week. This has changed how our investor relations team does outreach when they're on a tour around for investors or they're having to send 500 emails. It used to take them days, right? Now it takes them minutes and they can watch it all happen in real time. There is an elephant in the room. I usually say this to developers because they seem to be the most reticent kind of population. You will work more. You will work on multiple things at the same time. You will have greater cognitive load. And now that apps are on your phone and tablets, this work is following you everywhere you go. And you will not make more money, right? That trade-off seems very, very bad, right? But the challenge here is what I tell my friends that are developers is what choice do we have, right? We get to vote on if we want to participate or we don't want to participate. That's like the only choice we have because all of your competitors are using AI. All your teammates could be using AI and getting much more productivity out. So I want to call this out because I don't want you to leave this meeting thinking Abhilash is just drunk on the Kool-Aid thinking AI is going to make everybody's lives better. It absolutely can, but let's be clear, it's more work, right? It's more cognitive load. Here I have some quick tips. Emily and Christina, if you could send these out to folks, that'd be great. These are my quick tips, right? I'm just going to run through them real quick. So instead of writing a description of a visual bug that you're seeing, let's say you made a dashboard and you're like, that's not the right color, that's not the right shadow. Paste in the screenshot. Don't try to explain it in words. These language models have vision capability, meaning they can look at and analyze an image, right? You can't ask for a better layout. You have to tell it, what do you mean by better? So when I first started making presentations, I would ask it to make a presentation. It would be very generic. It would look like Claude made it. Claude colors, Claude layout. It was really, really bad. Then I thought, okay, well, what do designers do? What is their workflow? Well, okay, first, what do they do when they have a blank canvas? They block out the white space and they strategically think about how much white space to have, where to have it, then think about filling in those blocks with content, right? Once you break it down into a systematic approach, then the AI can do a much more decent job at it. Analyzing PDFs in individual chats, that is a recipe for burning so many tokens. So what I mean is an individual chat, if you load up a bunch of PDFs, remember what I said about the session keeps getting resent? All of those tokens for those PDFs get sent over and over and over again, and you're not learning anything new and it's not being productive. So instead, use concepts like in Gemini, there's gems. In Claude, there's chat projects. Use a project and put the file into the project. That way, you can have as many chats about it as you want, and it's just cached once, right? Um, if you're using Claude models, Sonnet, the middle model is good as a default, right? Don't use the best model for everything. Opus is 5 times more expensive than Sonnet, but it's not 5 times more capable, right? So try to figure out where the value is and save the larger models for the more complex tasks you need. If you need to analyze hundreds of documents, that's when you would use co-work, right? Co-work is a feature where it runs on a local virtual machine on your laptop, meaning it has its own operating system in a sandbox environment that it has full control over, meaning it could do things in parallel. It could install software packages you don't have yet, and on and on and on. So big meaty task where one example is I was teaching somebody about AI, and they had 20 years of their consulting work in Dropbox. We set up co-work and we said, go look through the 20 years of work and give me an in-depth analysis of what you've worked on, who you worked with, all of that strategic stuff. And it did it within 10 minutes. It was remarkable. It really blew his mind, right? Because it was literally 50,000 files that I had to go through. Um, each person in your org making skills for themselves, that's great. But you must have a shared repo or a shared drive where you have everybody dumping their skills into. It could be a Cooper folder, it could be an Ed folder, and they keep their stuff in there. The advantage to that is that now you can look across all the skills in your company and ask the question, what can I improve on my own skills on my laptop? And the last one I'll do here, because I don't need to read this for you, but accepting the first answer. So Anthropic released a education report on AI fluency, and they had some behavior patterns for novice users versus really kind of AI literate, AI fluent folks. One of the biggest differences is in who accepts the first answer. AI novices often will ask a question, get a response, and say, done. AI experts know, nope, I'm not. The game here is iteration. The game here is more turns at the crank. So I tell people every time you get a response, just give it, fire it back, be skeptical, check your work. And you will be amazed at the things it catches, the misstatements it fixes, the missing things, it finds errors. It's just great. You might have heard of OpenClaw and Ralph Wiggum Loop and GStack from Gary Tan from Y Combinator or Gastown, all of these different frameworks that people are building. Here's the secret. All it is giving you more turns of the crank. That's it. So these frameworks force the AI to be in a loop, right? And so the more turns of the crank you can get your system to do, the better your output's going to be. Don't correct every typo. Typos don't matter. Just hit send. Remember, the game is iteration, not getting it right the first time. So move away from, ooh, how do I phrase this? I forgot to capitalize that. Okay, let me fix that type. No, don't. Hit send, ship it, and then get the response back and then iterate on it, right? And then the sentience and cognition, I feel very, very strongly about it because I feel like a lot of people use that to trick folks into investing large sums of money into initiatives that'll never pan out. And so language models are language models. It's language in, language out, right? That's it. That's the only thing that's happening. There's no other magic here. And then try not to compete on AI strategy. I think that's just a mistake. No one here can keep up by themselves. That's why I created the AI collective, right? I don't need to keep up on every model announcement because I have 270 engineers that are all in my channel that can talk to each other, help each other. So try to create that flywheel. Just like I said about the shared skills across your organization, you want to try to find that community, right? Because you will not be able to keep up on your own. I know I certainly can't. And everyone I've met usually has at least key people that they trust in the space that they rely on. And with that, I think the next slide is the prize portal, Emily.
Well, I think Cooper's got his hands up, or hand
Oh,
up,
perfect. Yeah, yeah.
and then I know there's some great questions that have come in here. So Cooper, why don't you go first, and then we'll hit a couple of the questions that have come in.
Yeah, love it.
Well, I was gonna just answer at least one of the questions that came in. Talking about the skills creator skill. So they asked, like, do the AIs have the ability to uh, create a skill to create skills? And it's like they're basically default. I tried to answer it in the chat, but it didn't go through. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question.
There's a meta skill called a skill creator skill that Anthropic has released that it uses to make a skill, right? Um, but you could make your own if you wanted to. There's no magic there. And what is a skill? It is a set of text files. That's it, right? There's no magic. That's why it's so easy to share skills with each other, right? You could just zip it up, send it over, be like, hey, try this one. That's why a shared drive is really, really great. And if you're a developer, a shared repo.
Great. One of the questions that's come in here, it's framed as a skill. Are skills Claude exclusive, or do other systems use them as well?
So it was Claude exclusive back in November, and then they released it as a standard. So Anthropic released the MCP standard. Now everybody's using MCP. Same thing. There's a skill standard, and you're seeing it pop up in many, many different AI platforms.
So maybe to circle back, there's a question: why are using skills valuable? So maybe kind of go back and cover that point
Yeah.
again.
So there's a jargony word or phrase called progressive disclosure. So if you're interested in how skills work, there's a great engineering blog article that's accessible to most people because it's a lot of visual diagrams on Anthropic's engineering blog. And Christina, Emily, I can send you the link afterwards to send out. Um, but the reason why skills are powerful is that once it loads, it doesn't load the entire skill all in one go. So remember when I said if you try to load up like 20, 30 different MCPs, all of those tool calls are being loaded at the start? Well, that's not true for skills. Skills, all it loads is the name and the description of every skill that you have. That's it. So at the session start, you have a table of contents for the AI to see what it can do, right? If you happen to say something or ask a question that is similar to one of your skills, it'll activate that skill. But progressive disclosure, you can think about peeling as an onion, right? So it goes through the first layer, it reads the main skill.md file and goes, okay, what do I need to know? And it only traverses deeper into subfolders, subdirectories, other linked references if it needs to. So it's very, very context efficient, right? I didn't have to load all of the skill. I only need to load one part. So I could have a conditional skill saying, if it's this scenario, do this. If it's that scenario, do this. That could be one skill, right? And it's just very ordered, hierarchical, and structured. So that's the advantage of using skills is that you're not blowing up your context window, and you're being strategic about when you introduce certain ideas into the context.
Follow-on question is: can skills be leveraged in Copilot 365? So I think the answer is
Ooh.
yes, but I'm not sure.
That I actually don't know. My weakest spot is Copilot. I haven't seen too many developers stick around with it, but did anyone in the audience use skills in um, Copilot? Feel free to answer. But yeah, I genuinely don't know. That's a good question.
One of the questions, what is the difference between skills and capabilities?
Yeah, so capabilities is likely a synonym for tools. So if you see capabilities, tools, MCPs, connectors, know that they're all synonyms for the same thing. They're all MCP servers. So likely when you're doing capabilities, you're connecting tools, right? When you're doing skills, that's what I'm talking about here. So the MCP servers are loaded at the start, and when you load an MCP server, all of its function calls are being loaded, whether you use them or not. So if you have an Atlassian MCP, for example, you're loading all of it, whether you use it or not. And so it's polluting your context window with just irrelevant information, whereas a skill is more targeted. It loads it when it needs it.
Going back to context, one of the questions is context only session based or can it be persisted across multiple sessions for a given user? And then this is follow on to that is, does that hold same for skills?
Yeah, so the context window is ephemeral, meaning it is in the moment that you're interacting with the model, right? It is what is in that chat session. If you wanted to take ideas from that session and save it to a file, you absolutely can. So when you think about providing a model context, it could be in the chat, or you might say, ooh, I've got context for that module or that financial reporting workflow in this file over here, and you load that file in your chat. Either way, but the context window is the amount of information that gets sent to the AI model on every single response. So how you loaded that, whether you typed it in, where you loaded in an external file, or you gave it a PDF, it doesn't matter. They're all part of that context window. But think about the window as when you're using the AI, the question is, what does it have access to? That's the context window. But anything can be context, right? A script can be a context. An Excel file could be context, because these are all things that would teach it how to do something, right?
On that line, one of the questions is, are skills similar to giving context within the normal chat, but instead of giving context each time, the context is preloaded as a skill?
Almost. I like that answer. I would add, remember, it's not the only the context efficiency that matters, because you're right. Like that skill is loaded when it's needed, but it's also that determinism piece that I said. So before skills, let's say I want to run a Python script against a PDF to extract the text, right? I wanted to just do simple OCR. And before skills, the language model will have to read that Python script. All that Python code is now in my context, and it would have to read the contents of the PDF, which may be completely unrelated to what I'm doing, right? After skills, you could say, use this script against this file, and it knows, let me just do it. It's got access to execution. So it'll just run the script against the file without reading either. So you see the efficiency there? You didn't pollute your conversation with just Python code randomly, right? Because to a language model, remember when I said this is an essay that you're asking it to complete? It doesn't know that you wrote that or a Python script wrote that. It's equivalent to you typing it all in a huge essay and hitting enter, right at the top of a session. So you see how like you could easily lose grip on your context and introduce a lot of polluting, irrelevant, distracting data. So it's that determinism piece that really separates skills. Thank you, Eric. I'll take that.
There is a question here. How can we leverage Claude with shared drives? So I think this is probably an access control security question.
Yeah, so we at WestCap, we have Box as our main, but we have some people using Drive. It doesn't matter what the platform is. If you have an MCP, absolutely you can connect to it. So Box has an MCP, Google Drive has an MCP. Let's say you don't have an MCP, but you have API access. You could make a skill to access that third-party SaaS application to do all of those actions, right, on a shared drive if you wanted to. Literally any of them. So for example, we have a S&P software called iLevel for kind of like fund accounting, just asset management stuff, portfolio management. You're not going to see S&P release an MCP on that anytime soon, but it has API access. So I can make a skill that basically takes the API documentation, makes a skill that says, learn how to do all those functions in the API. And now I've got example scripts that my AI can use to do those actions. So absolutely, you should absolutely have a shared drive or a shared repo and connect it up and teach it what is in there, how to use it, what are the function calls, etc.
Great. Another question here, functional. Oh, sorry, Cooper, you can add something?
I was going to say, yeah, I think that there's kind of an assumption at first that you write your own skills like manually, but like we said earlier, it's like use a skill creator. But kind of on that note around the APIs, I mean, one thing that was really helpful for me when I was first starting was just like getting started. And then at the end of like a session where I would give it all this guidance, like I wouldn't focus necessarily, we're building a skills document. I was like, I'm trying to accomplish a task. Here's an API thing. I don't know how to write Python, just like make it happen. And at the end of that session, I would say, hey, can you reflect on like what my kind of skills we should have created to make this kind of process better in the future? And then it would be like, oh, like you asked for this, you added this guidance, like you corrected me here. These skills would have been invoked had we had them. So then it kind of creates this library, and you just keep doing that over and over and over again
Yes.
to reflect. And that's just how you build out and build that momentum. It's kind of like a snowball. So I would describe it, but
Yeah,
it
and you're building
compounds.
and you're building up a foundation, right? So when I'm talking to developers, it is very easy for me to figure out how mature they are. I simply ask them how many skills they've made. So to give you a point of comparison, Ty Heim, who's in the next session in the series, has built over 180. And so like if you haven't built 180, I don't want to hear that you've built too many, or you know what I mean? Like you absolutely do what Cooper is saying as the bootstrapping. Figure out all the points of friction in your session, and at the end say, "Hey, that was a friction-filled session," meaning I told you to do something, you didn't do exactly what I wanted, and I had to correct your behavior. And so it could pull that out and say, "Ooh, what skill would have helped here? Let me look at the skills we have already. I could have added this statement to that skill and made it better." So absolutely, you should do this kind of iterative after a session, figure out if you could improve your entire system through that. The other thing I want to note is that you should always have a save function. You should have a way of saving every session, all of the key elements, key decisions made, what did we discuss, what did we rule out, any critical piece of information I need to resume that work in a new session. You should get into the habit of always doing that. I have a directory in every project I do in AI that's like an activity log or progress notes with date stamped markdown files, just text files that describe what I did. That way I could just tell it resume where we left off and it knows what I mean, right? Um, but here's the best benefit. If you also log in all of the mistakes Claude has made, you don't need to do it after every session. You can wait for the end of the week on a Friday and be like, look through all of our sessions for the past week and figure out what skills we need, right? And so it gives you freedom to not be shackled to a chat session. You can take that progress note and bring it into any AI platform you want, right? So it gives you that portability. And so you should absolutely own that context of what you've done for work.
Fantastic. Well, we have several more questions, and if we have time at the end, we'll come back to these. I
Sure.
think we'd like to do the prize portal here. So, Emily, if you want to take over.
Yeah, it sounds great. Um, yeah, so we're gonna do a quick giveaway. We have some really fun prizes up for grabs, so just go ahead and keep your eye on the screen. I'm gonna go ahead and share mine now. Share. Okay, are you seeing the portals, hopefully?
Not yet. There we
Okay.
go. There we go.
Now is it popping up?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So real quick, I'm just gonna explain how it works. You're looking right now at 4 mystery portals on my screen, and each one is hiding a different prize. We're gonna be picking 2 winners today, one at a time, completely at random, and only attendees who are joined live right now are eligible. So I'm gonna go ahead and press the button now to select our first winner. And once you see your name pop up, go ahead and type in the chat the portal that you would like me to open. All right, Alex, you are the first winner. Alex, I'm gonna pronounce your last name wrong. Go ahead and type in the chat the portal number that you'd like.
Looks like he typed in 4.
Four. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and click portal 4. And you are the winner of a new Apple Watch Series 10. Very nice. Congratulations. I'll go ahead and follow up with you via email on how to claim your prize. I'm going to go ahead and reset and shuffle for the next winner. And it's going to be Renee Tobiasen. Go ahead and type in the chat what portal you would like me to pick for you. Again, it's Renee Tobiasen. Give you a second to type in the chat. Gonna give a couple more seconds, Renee. If not, I'm going to choose another winner.
Oh, looks like Renee is no longer on the call.
All
I don't
right.
see her listed.
I'm gonna go ahead and pick another winner then. Do we have Sean Kempert? Lucky winner number 2. 2! Okay, perfect. Portal 2 is going to be a $300 airline gift card. So congrats to our second and final winner, Sean. I'll go ahead and make sure to follow up with you after this webinar, and we can go ahead and dive back into Q&A if you guys would like. I know there's a lot of great questions coming in. And again, congrats to our 2 lucky winners for our first portal giveaway.
Great. Well, thanks, Emily, for driving some fun there, and congratulations to the prize winners. I know we have about 5 or so minutes left. There's some great questions here. I think this is real. The next one here I'm going to read out. I think is really important because I think it's something that everybody is struggling with and needs guidance, which is how do you embrace AI in your company, especially from application development and maintenance. The subject matter experts can now code with AI, but how do you enforce compliance to company security and IT controls? So I think there's a lot to unpack there. But I think the most important part of it is how do you embrace it as an organization and then go out from there. So Abhilash, love to get your thoughts on that.
So when I look at what Treasury4 had to do, I mean, it required both top down and bottoms up approach to getting going. And so you have to try these tools to figure out where it'll fit in on your compliance and security protocols. And so, I mean, we had a lot of trial and error, Cooper, right? Like, so, I mean, just speaking with Treasury4, like, what do you think really was the difference maker?
The difference maker for us, I'll start and Cooper add in. I think it was, to your point, tops down from our management team, the recognition that we needed to embrace as a company AI, but also the bottoms up embracement by our team. And it did not,
Oh, am I frozen?
a little bit there, you were
That was you
frozen.
guys?
Yeah, now you're good.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. So top down embrace, bottoms up embrace, but it wasn't without friction, pain, bruises, and the journey I would describe is a little bit like Formula One for us, meaning there are times where you need to step on the gas and go, the tachometer goes up into the red, and that creates a lot of challenge for the friction for the team. But then there's times when you're going around the corner where you need to let off because you either have to let things catch up a bit or you have to focus on some other areas and deliverables. But then as you come out of that corner, then game on again and move and push the pedal down. And so it's been a journey. It's been, we've had our bumps and bruises along the way. But are we better off as a company? Absolutely. Are our customers better off and benefiting from our pace of innovation and development and what we're delivering? Absolutely. And every customer conversation, every prospect conversation that we have today, AI is front and center in that. And so we have a very tangible benefits that we can point to and show and demonstrate because of AI. Cooper, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, none of this ever happened without, I mean, Abhilash to start, and then Greg Moritz, our CTO, really like spearheaded the like, yes, it's like we're going to pick a tool and we're going to get move forward. And but even when we had that, I mean, there were still people who were still like, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to try it. But like, there was that element of the bottoms up approach to. You had to have the right people who were eager to start using them. And I mean, it's really just kind of like this exponential curve. Like it starts slow, but it just keeps compounding
Yes.
and compounding and compounding. And I think, what I can recall as one of the most significant points that was made to me when I was getting ready to start using it was like the difference between somebody who is really good at AI versus somebody who's not is 3 weeks. And I still say that to clients today, where it's like, just give yourself 3 weeks to just get through that first part of that exponential curve where it's like just little tiny, very little steps of progress, but you're making progress. And I promise you, like it's a certainty that you will keep getting better, and it gets better, and it's going to take you places you've just never thought. I mean, it's all these ideas that you wish that you could have time to do. Like you'll see that in some of the analytics, at least for Treasury4 that we're producing, but it's really cool. So
And I think for businesses, right, your North Star should be, how do I make an AI platform that is self-improving or as self-improving as it can be? So at T4, all of their skills from every developer is being put into a common location. And so people's experiences are improving without them even having to think about it, right? Because our AI systems know to pull that shared repo, bring in any improvements. And so it's like this growing foundation. And you want to always try to get there, right? You want to move away from piecemeal AI use. So back in the day, developers used to copy and paste things. Oh, fix this method. Oh, I'm going to copy that back into the code. Those days are over. And the days of like, oh, it just made up a number, those days are over. If you haven't revisited AI from those early friction points, like please revisit it with skills.
Great. Well, I know we could probably continue for the next 2 hours with questions, but I think we're coming up on time, which is great. That's a sign of a great webinar. And I think, and importantly, and I started out at the beginning here, Abhilash is a teacher first and foremost, amongst many tremendous skills and capabilities, and a tremendous person. But I think you see why we value his teaching skills so much. So, please connect with Abhilash. Any final words you'd like to share?
No, I think, look, you just got to jump in. So there was a David Letterman interview with Oprah that always comes to mind. He was complaining that he didn't know from his meditation teacher if his practice was actually helping him doing anything. And the meditation teacher said, look, it's like jumping into a body of water. It doesn't matter how deep you go, you still get wet, right? So you just got to jump in. You got to learn the lingo and you got to practice.
Fantastic. And with that, we're at time. Really, thank you everyone for attending today. We hope you found it valuable. I know I did. I learned a lot here. I always learn whenever I talk with Abhilash, and really appreciate you kicking off our AI and Treasury Decoded series. Session's recorded. Emily will be sending out the link to the recording. And please, if you haven't, register for upcoming sessions. We have one coming up led by Greg Morris, our CTO, Cooper Strout, and Ty Heim. And then our infrastructure team is going to be talking about security. There was a couple of questions around that. And then we're going to talk about tangible use in data-rich payments. I know there's a lot of talk about ISO 20022 XML and deeper data payloads, and of course, data and context, which we learned today, is going to impact payments. So please join us for that. And with that, feel free to send over any questions. And I encourage everyone to connect with Abhilash on LinkedIn or in the Treasury4 team. So thank you, everyone. Have a great Thursday.